you will trump them every single time. Because that's the way this country was built. It's built on ingenuity, self-reliance, independence, and knowing where you want to do with your assets and where they go. And you just don't want anybody running interference with that. So, any other questions?
What's your longest case so far you've had?
Longest
number of days it took you to make a ruling, say from start to finish?
You talking about in court or like after court and I'm still thinking about it?
Either one.
So far in probate court, in previous legal career, I had a 14-day trial. But in this function that I've got, I think 2 days. We had a 2-day hearing. But the decisions are kind of tough sometimes. I mean, a lot of times we can only, and that's another thing. You bring up a real good point. Because let me tell you, let me explain to y'all what it's like to sit behind the bench. Because I listen to people on both sides. And when you've got families involved, not everybody, it's not like one side's always going to be untruthful. And not always one side's going to always be truthful. I mean, face it, you're playing for your team. I mean, you are. And so it's like any other thing. You're playing for your side, and I have to realize that. You're advocating for your side, they're advocating for their side. So not everything they tell me is absolute truth, but also it's not absolutely untrue. So as a judge, you sit here and you sift through witnesses on both sides. And, this is what the intent was. This is, they'll bring you evidence and everything. That is tough. It's tough when you're on that bench because I have to sit there and try to decipher. And, of course, the person I'm trying to make a decision for is no longer here. They can't talk to me. If they did, I'd be in real trouble. I'd be 1013ing myself if I heard them talk. But, you're actually having to interpret what somebody intended from probably two biased positions, which I can, I understand why they're biased. They're playing on two different teams, and they're both there to win. But again, I can make that decision. I will make that decision because it's what I'm sworn to do. But don't let me make that decision. Stay out of that courtroom. Don't make me go to court for 2 days and it takes me a week to make a decision, because all I can do is interpret it the best way I can. And how do I get to know a family in 5 hours? I mean, that's what I want to ask people. How do you expect me to sit here and understand every single dynamic of your family in 5 hours? I mean, explain, starting with grandmother all the way up, what she wanted, what she intended, and what y'all had, and how you wanted to do it. In 2 or 3 hours, how can I interpret what that person really wanted and all the dynamics of that family? It's not a good thing. I mean, I tell you, worst comes to worst, that's the decision I have to make. They're tough decisions. And I pray about it. I pray that I make the best decisions, and I try to listen to the evidence and apply the legal principles to it and render a decision. But it's not my preference. My preference is for people to handle it among themselves. The fewer decisions I can make, the better society's running. In fact, the fewer decisions any court's making, I'm on tape again, is the better society is doing, I'm telling you. Because people make better decisions for themselves than third parties. And elected people don't always make your best decision for you. I'll tell you that, whether at any level in the court system. That's pretty obvious, I think, at this point. We've had some dramatic decisions made this year by courts. And you can see how much faith you want to put in that. It doesn't always reflect our will, does it? So I'm just a little different. I'm cut a little different. I like independence. I like people to come in and take charge and make mine and Melissa's job a lot easier. You make us lazy. That's what I want y'all to do. I want y'all to come in and say it's done. We've already got this figured out. So.
Is there a difference between guardianship and powers of attorney?
Yes. The power of attorneys. They operate. A guardianship is a full-fledged, you step completely in the shoes of the party, and it's not revocable. Power of attorneys are always revocable. There's not a power of attorney that's not revocable. It can be revoked by simply a person looking at you and say, I don't want you to have power of attorney over me. Guardianship is not that way. That's why decisions on guardianship is one of the harder decisions for me to make, because I have to absolutely, and this goes back again, guys, I'm a grassroots constitutionalist. When I have to rule on a guardianship, you have to realize that what you're doing is you're removing from someone their rights. They don't have a right to vote. They don't have a right to, a lot of times they can't drive. You know, every right that they earned in life, that the Constitution guarantees, those inalienable rights, which is another speech, but the inalienable rights that they have, God-given rights, God given by your Creator, in the words of Thomas Jefferson, that those were inalienable rights endowed to you by the Creator. And Scott has to take those away. That's pretty hard. I have to find an extremely compelling reason to do that. But there are circumstances, obviously, where that has to happen. We have people that suffer from dementia and stuff, and they absolutely require somebody to look over them. But those decisions, guys, are some of the hardest. I had a case came up, and it was consensual from the sense that the family all agreed on who should be guardian and everything. But there was a gentleman sitting in my office, and I was just thinking about this because I love history. But this individual had been on the Arizona when it got bombed at Pearl Harbor. But the other hat that this individual wore was that he was on the Missouri when they signed the peace treaty. And I was sitting there, and this man was sitting in my office. I'm like, my gosh, this is history in front of me. I mean, the man survived the bombing of the thing, and it was standing on the decks in that great victory the U.S. had when we signed the surrender from Japan. So he was sitting there with the day that it started to the day it finished, and I thought, man, I mean, who am I to take this guy's rights away? You know, I just, but what a remarkable individual. But that's a good part of the job. You do see some remarkable things, but those are hard decisions to make. We have had decisions. It's not uncommon for people not to like some of the decisions that their parents make. We had a case, can't name the parties obviously, but we had a case where the kids just didn't like the way that Dad was doing things. Didn't like the way he was selling property and giving some property to groups that children didn't agree with. You know, he liked animals, and he was good. So they came and wanted me to give them conservatorship and guardianship. And I really laid it on them. The kids got up and said, you know, this is just not smart. You know, I can't believe Dad's doing this. And I said, well, it's not your money, it's Dad's money. You know, and until you demonstrate to me that he's doing something completely, that, in other words, he's disposing of his income to a degree that it's going to actually hurt him, he earned it, it's his. And, you know, if that makes him happy. But no, I'm not sitting here, I'm not going to make financial decisions and say he's just a bad investor. That's not my job. You know, he can do what he wants to do with his money. So, but a good question, though, because those are tough decisions to make as a judge, some of the hardest. And we didn't get into the worst, but the absolute worst, guys, is obviously guardianship over minors. That's when it gets. Y'all want just a minute? I got to tell you about this because I think as a society you deserve to hear this. This is the most heartbreaking thing. And again, I'll bounce it off Melissa. She sees them coming in. You wouldn't believe the numbers of guardianships that come. And let me tell you when that happens. It's usually mom because Dad's not around. Dad's not really Dad because they didn't get married. Dad's just, well, you know, he donated the materials to make the child, but he's not in the scene, so I usually wind up only with mom. Okay, but these mothers are young mothers. They come in, and they're wanting to give the children to aunts, uncles, grandparents, and parents. A lot of times grandparents. And I'm looking at these people going, man, they are in bad shape. I mean, they're literally sitting there, and you can just tell, you know, sometimes they're 70. We had one that was 85 years old. And this, so, you know, and it blows my mind. And they come in, and one of my common questions is, if I have the young lady before me, is I'm like, well, where's Dad? Is he in the picture? Is he even contributing this? And of course, I get the typical responses, I don't care about Dad, don't want to talk to him, not going to tell you who he is. And so I usually look at that individual and say, well, what plan do you have? I mean, we've got sometimes 2 children. I'm like, you got 2 children. What's your plan? I mean, you're responsible for these 2 children. Let me just give you the response that I get most of the time. Get ready for this one. It's a good one. And usually they got the cell phone in the hand, by the way, and I make them put it on the desk. I'm like, give me the cell phone. So I'll put it on the desk. But isn't that a sad commentary? I'm like, you know, that's when that's when it bothers me. And they don't have a plan, oftentimes. And again, I'm on camera, so I can get bitten by this one. But the other thing that's really disturbing is, and more than, I won't say half, I'm going to say 40%. And 40% of the cases, by the time we get through and we've done the guardianship over to the parents or the guardians, about 40% of the time they raise their hand, and I'll say, what is it? And they'll say, do I still get to keep the check? Oh, this is when Scott has to get up from his desk. I may get out the door and go get a drink of water, come back, so I'm not going to get fired from my job or get some complaint, because there's some expletives that I could probably use at that point. So I usually come back and I say, oh, I forgot. As part of the order, I tell the guardians, instruct them, they're to go down to Child Family Services and tell them and give them this guardianship, and you tell them that check goes to you. But what a concern. And that is sometimes it's more heartbreaking than it is funny, because I'm thinking this is serious. This is the world we live in where that question got asked. I mean, that is a ridiculous question to ask. They didn't respond to, I need to get my GED. I want to go to night school. I want to look for a trade. It was, do I have to give, what do I do with the check? Can I keep it? And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're so far off the track. So, I mean, that is a big commentary on our society, and that is hard. It's hard to take. It's hard to see. But what I'm giving y'all tonight is the real world version. It's not powder coated. I'm not fluffing it for you. It happens. You see it happen. I mean, sometimes you can ask our staff. Sometimes we're just mesmerized. People leave and we're like, wow. I mean, it's just, have we declined to that level? And the answer is yes. But unless we have people that stand up and tell people about that, unless we go out and we observe it ourselves, and that it's going to continue on as long as a society we're apathetic and we let it happen, But it's the truth, and it's a harsh reality. But it is very sad. And I don't know. I don't know. We follow up with guardianships. We do the best we can. But, my heart bleeds for those kids, because I'm just praying that they have some hope in life, and somehow that cycle is broken. And I'm praying that it is, because if it's not, we're in deep, as they say, we're in deep hock. And I would encourage you to do this. Every citizen in this room should do this one time, because we have it very often. Go to juvenile court and look at the numbers of people in there. Just sit through it one time and tell me that it doesn't impact your life, because it is truly heartbreaking to see. I don't know what the answers are, other than all we can do is should have gone to that prayer breakfast too, is pray for our country. Don't lose hope. Pray for our country. Do the best we can to set examples for other people, and just hope one day that this somehow turns itself around. Ultimately, I don't want this country to hit the bottom of the barrel before that happens. That may be the other course that ultimately it takes. But that's the only thing we can do, is set a good example and do what we can to help these people. But it is sad. I told you wouldn't leave here feeling good tonight. I'm drug into my life. But on the other hand, there is hope. We've run into some remarkable individuals. Like I said, shared with you a story about the man who was on the Arizona. We do see that too. But I guess if we weren't dealing with issues, we wouldn't be courts. So maybe I'm seeing just a little bit biased view of it. But anything else? Anybody got any questions? Oh, well, listen, thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.